Yes, we are ready. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. This meeting is being called to order. It is May 9th, and this is a time and date set for the public hearing before the Nevada Commission on Judicial Discipline for the Honorable Judge Michelle Fiore in case number 2024 Admin 02. This is regarding the notice of intent to rescind and reinstate suspension with salary of Judge Fiore as a result of her recent pardon. And with that, I'll turn it over to Nancy Shrehans for the roll call.
And just for clarity's sake, as I take the roll, I will ask that you consent to the recording of this Zoom meeting. And with that, I will start with Commission Chair Stephanie Humphrey.
Here, and I consent.
Commission Vice Chair John Krompatek.
Here, and I consent.
Presiding Officer Carl Armstrong.
Here, and I consent.
Justice of the Peace Kendra Birchie.
Here, and I consent.
Commissioner Patricia Halstead.
Here, and I consent.
Commissioner Joe Sanford.
Here, and I consent.
Justice of the Peace Barbara Skifalakwa.
Here, and I consent.
Commission Executive Director and General Counsel Paul Dyla.
Here, and I consent.
Commission Senior Associate Counsel Dominica Batten.
Here, and I consent.
Commission Senior Associate Counsel Tom Wilson.
Here, and I consent.
Clerk to the Commission Valerie Carter.
Here, and I consent.
Clerk to the Commission Katie Sagiri.
Here, and I consent.
Respondent Michelle Fiore.
Sorry, Paola Armeni on behalf of Judge Fiore, who is present in my office with me. And I consent.
Thank you. Court Reporter Aaron Ferrado.
I'm here.
Thank you. And I am Clerk to the Commission Nancy Shrehans. And with that, I will turn it over to the Presiding Officer Carl Armstrong.
Okay. Please take notice that this is the time set for the public hearing on the matter in terms of a notice of a suspension hearing and notice of the Commission's intent to suspend with salary. At this hearing, the Commission will determine whether a suspension order entered April 14, 2025 is still warranted following the presidential pardon, and if not, to determine whether respondent poses a substantial threat of serious harm to the public or to the administration of justice based upon United States versus Michelle Fiore 2.24 CR 155, C NRS 1.46755. Pursuant to NRS 1.46755, the Commission provides 7 days of notice of intent to suspend with salary and an opportunity to respond. This is the time in which that response will take place. The Commission has received the following exhibits to consider in their deliberations: the superseding criminal indictment, a certified trial transcripts from Judge Fiore's federal criminal trial, a certified copy of the jury verdict, a motion for judgment of acquittal, reply to the motion for judgment of acquittal, motion for new trial, and reply to motion for new trial, order denying motions for acquittal and new trial, and emails sent to the Commission from the public in favor of and in opposition to Judge Fiore returning to the bench. From what I understand, these are a sampling of the emails and correspondence that has been submitted both for and against reinstatement of Judge Fiore, and the Commission will consider that as part of the evidence that they will be reviewing in closed session relative to this case. Is there any motions or anything of that nature to come before the Commission before Judge Fiore and her counsel address the Commission? With that being said, the floor is yours, Mr. Armeni.
Thank you, Mr. Armstrong. And I just would ask that the amount of letters that were in favor for Ms. Fiore be part of the public record at some point. I know that I also submitted character letters. I apologize if they're duplicative of some of the emails that you received because I wasn't sure who was going to have time to do emails. I will preface that the letters were for sentencing. And that I did ask some of those letter writers if I could use them in the Commission, and they authorized that. So I just want to preface that when they're written to Judge Dorsey, that is why. But thank you for the opportunity to address this honorable commission. As I've stated, my name is Paola Armeni, and I have the honor of representing Judge Michelle Fiore. As Mr. Armstrong laid out, the question before you today is whether the suspension order is still warranted. And I submit that it is not. And to the extent that any additional suspension continues, I submit that it would exceed this commission's jurisdiction and would be an abuse of discretion. Let me start first with a pardon. A pardon reaches both the punishment and the prescribed offense, or excuse me, both the punishment and prescribed for the offense and the guilt of the offender when the pardon is full. It releases the punishment and blots out the existence of guilt. That is from Ex parte Garland, which is 71 U.S. 333, an 1866 case from our United States Supreme Court. That is also the same law in the state of Nevada in State versus Demuke. A full pardon effectively removes all penalties and disqualifications arising from a conviction, even though conviction itself remains on the record. This was an unconditional full pardon by the President of the United States, who exercised his authority pursuant to our United States Constitution. Originally, when this commission suspended Ms. Fiore, Judge Fiore, you did so with salary, and that was pursuant to the initial indictment, and there wasn't much challenge with that. Thereafter, when the jury verdict came about, the commission then exercised its authority under NRS 1.4675, subsection 2, subsection B, when a jury found her guilty. In doing so, you have seen me several times, or my colleague, Ms. Marina, come before you at every 60 days where there's a discussion whether we're going to rescind and reinstate this suspension without salary. And when the commission has done that on several occasions in their order, they have specifically said that there has been no change in circumstance and a formal statement of charges is premature because she's yet to be sentenced. So that puts us in this situation that we are here today, and we'll talk about some of the other factors. But that puts us in the question today of when does this end? The commission can no longer issue, rescind, and reinstate based on this conviction, based on the pardon. So we're in a situation that there will never be a sentencing and there will never be a judgment of conviction based on the timing of the pardon. Then we move on to the second portion, which I think the commission has taken the position that if the presidential pardon doesn't work here, well, we can look at another avenue for Judge Fiore to maybe suspend her. And that's where we talk about the substantial threat of serious harm. I submit to this commission, and I want to read a quote. Quote, "The commission only has jurisdiction over misconduct committed while serving as a judge. Therefore, the commission could not pursue alleged infractions committed in a previous capacity." End quote. This was an official statement by the Judicial Discipline Commission back on June 19th of 2019 to the Nevada Current when asked whether the Judicial Commission would take action against some judges that were former prosecutors and their behavior while they were a prosecutor. The commission went on to say, "Bar Council, the ABA is not the law in Nevada." Quote, the commission responded. So the commission itself has put out that they do not have jurisdiction when somebody is not a sitting judge. NRS 1.440 subsection 2B talks about the commission's jurisdiction as a result of an act or commission that occurs on and after the date on which the judge enters upon the duties of office. So why is this important? Because the 6-month period that is subject to all the documents that you have received that are supposed to be important to this matter today are based on conduct that occurred July 2019 through February of 2020, a 6-month period. At that time, Michelle Fiore was an elected political official, and as we know, political officials are not subjected to the judicial rules of the judicial canons. The judicial canons would not have applied to Michelle Fiore in July of 2019 and February of 2020. There is nothing before this commission about her conduct as a judge. Nothing. And to allow the commission to go back almost 5 years later and look at her actions 5 years later when she was not subject to judicial canons, she was not sitting on the bench, is dangerous. It's dangerous precedent, and it circumvents not only the presidential pardon, but the use of this conduct that's not related to her being a judge at all. And frankly, if that's the precedent that this commission takes, that should put every sitting judge in a position that they are terrified that at some point in time, the commission will say, years before you even thought about becoming a judge, we're going to look at that conduct that you did, and now it's subject to judicial discipline. So I submit to this commission, there is no jurisdiction to use the accusations in the federal criminal case against Ms. Fiore as a basis to suspend her. Now, lastly, the commission, I think, and I frankly, I didn't want to address this, but I want to make sure we cover all bases. The jurisdiction, if the commission finds there's no jurisdiction, I don't even think we get to this next section, but I will touch on it, which is a substantial threat of serious harm. We are now 10 months after the initial order of suspension. For the first time in those 10 months, we now have a new subsection that Ms. Fiore is subject to, which is 1.4675 subsection 4. In that subsection, it talks about pending a final disposition of the complaint. I have not seen a complaint in this case related to anything other than the United States District Court case, so I would submit that this section doesn't even apply. But even so, if we want to take a look at substantial threat of serious harm, let me start here. In a federal case, and I apologize if some of you already know this, the Bail Reform Act is what is responsible for determining whether somebody is released or detained in a federal case. Part of that analysis, similar to state court, is are they a danger to the community? In this case, Judge Fiore wasn't arrested, a summons was issued, she was given a personal recognizance. The government did not request her detention at the time that she came before the court initially on her arraignment. After she was convicted by the jury, the government did not ask for detention. Those all show on its face that she is not a danger to the community. Again, looking at a very pointed time period, which is a 6-month period, to rely on this 6-month period of alleged bad behavior or bad conduct would ignore all the good she has done in her years of public service. Now, Mr. Dahl was kind enough to share some of the negative comments that were received by the Judicial Commission yesterday, and I appreciate that. But I would ask you to be very careful in reviewing those and be skeptical, if not, of who's making those requests about not allowing Judge Fiore to get back on the bench. And this is why. For one example, Molly Taylor wrote an email to the Judicial Commission. Molly Taylor led the Expel Michelle Fiore recall effort years ago. She was actually charged with violating a misdemeanor, NRS 3.306.015, and there was no evidence of violation by Ms. Fiore. So that is just one person that you received a letter for that has now a negative effect. I don't know how many letters were submitted. I know I was copied on some of them, and I was told by others they wrote them. I want to remind you that back when I stood in front of you in October, all the Nye County commissioners were in favor of Ms. Fiore and still very supportive of her, despite the accusations. 2 of them, I understand, have since sent another email to the Judicial Commission in support of her. And I would ask you to look at the letters that really, from the people that actually know her, the character letters that you've received, people that have known her for years and know who she is, that the 6 months of bad conduct should not blemish her and have you guys decide that she's a substantial risk to the community. So let's talk about it. I know in the order from Judge Dorsey and in the media, a lot of it's about all the affluent people that came in and testified during her trial. Well, I submit that you're going to have some letters from other affluent people that have shown great support for Michelle Fiore during this time. Those include Bob Coffin, who said she's one of the hardest working public officials he's ever known. Community outreach efforts were unparalleled. Former Mayor Jan Jones Blackhurst, who stated all the good she had done and doing the right thing for her constituents and her community. Tick Segerblum, Ricky Barlow. Those are just some of the names of the people in our community that everybody thinks very highly of that also continue to support Judge Fiore. And those are some people, but there are plenty other people like you and I that just are in the community that have seen the good that she has done that wanted to express support for her. And you have all of that. What you don't see is other things like Michelle Fiore has done. She is the person that puts that tiny touch on her communication and her relationships with the people in her community, whether that's birthday cards to the people in her ward, thank you notes, personally handwritten thank you notes to the firefighters of Las Vegas Fire and Rescue for their years of service. She's opened her home for pasta nights for her community to come in and eat with her. She's hosted Christmas events, 4th of July, Easter egg hunts for events for families, all when she was in Ward 6, when all this conduct happened. Back to school drives, food during COVID. These are all the things that she has done for this community. It's easy to focus on a small blimp of negative and have people run with that. But I would submit to this commission that a fourth of her service to the community is more than most people will ever do in their lifetime. A fourth. Judge Fiore has been suspended for 10 months now already. There is no basis to continue her suspension, and we ask that it's rescinded. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that submittal. At this time, the commission will go into private session in order to deliberate on this matter. We thank you for your presentation, and we will let you know once we have made a decision.
Thank you.
This public session is now adjourned.